Reaganomics is defined as the economic policies of the former U.S. President Ronald Reagan, associated especially with the reduction of taxes and the promotion of unrestricted free market activity. So, what does that mean? Reagan proposed a phased 30% tax cut for the first 3 years of his presidency. The bulk of the cut would be concentrated at the upper income levels, and the economic theory behind the plan was called supply side or trickle down economics. The resulting economic growth would trickle down to everyone, and tax relief for the rich would enable them to spend and invest more. The new spending would then stimulate the economy and create new jobs. The high interest rates caused the value of the dollar to rise on the international exchange market, which made American goods more expensive abroad, and as a result, exports decreased while imports increased. The defense industry boomed as well. Reagan insisted that the United States was open to a window of vulnerability to the Soviet Union regarding nuclear defense. The national debt tripled from $1 to $3 trillion during the Reagan years. Many idealistic dreams from the 1960s were soon worn down by inflation, foreign policy turmoil, and rising crime. After this, many Americans embraced a new conservatism in social, economic, and political life during the 1980s, and this was characterized by the policies of President Ronald Reagan. The populist conservative movement was actually known as the New Right. It appealed to many Americans, including Christians, anti-tax crusaders, advocates of deregulation and smaller markets, advocates of a more powerful American presence abroad, and many disaffected white liberals. The movement resonated with many citizens who had once supported the liberal policies, but no longer believed the Democratic Party represented their interests.
The Cold War. During Reagan's first term, there was increased spending for defense to aid anti-communist forces in Latin America during the Cold War, which increased tensions with the Soviet Union. Gorbachev tried to change Soviet domestic policies by introducing glasnost, or openness, for more political freedom for Soviet citizens, and perestroika, which was the reconstruction of the Soviet economy by introducing free market practices. Gorbachev decreased tensions by the two nations by removing Soviet troops from Afghanistan, and both he and Reagan agreed to remove and destroy intermediate-range missiles. Both countries also put diplomatic pressure on Iran and Iraq to end their war as well. Gorbachev soon declared that he was not going to support the communist satellites in Eastern Europe. In October 1990, the Berlin Wall was torn down and East and West Germany were joined once again. Boris Yeltsin, who was the president of the Russian Republic, joined several other Soviet republics to form the Commonwealth of Independent States, CIS. He disbanded the Communist Party in Russia and attempted to establish a democracy and a free market economy in Russia. Bush and Gorbachev signed START 1 in 1991, which reduced the number of nuclear warheads under 10,000 for each side. Bush and Yeltsin signed START 2, which reduced the number of nuclear weapons just over 3,000 each, and U.S. economic assistance to Russia. During Clinton's presidency, technological innovations in personal computers, software, internet, cable, and wireless communication increased national productivity. Companies such as Apple and Microsoft boom along with Amazon, Yahoo, and Google. With competition in Europe and Asia, the U.S. inflation rate was below 3% each year because of cutting costs. Investors gained more than 22% in stocks, and number of household worth increased, and the unemployment rate fell to 3.9% by 2000.
On September 11, 2001, terrorists from al-Qaeda crashed planes into the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, causing the deadliest terrorist attack on U.S. soil. 9/11 led to changes in U.S. policy to protect the nation, including the creation of the Homeland Security Department. Following the terrorist attacks on 9/11, George Bush made a statement to the joint session of Congress, saying you were either with us or with the terrorists. This led to the War on Terrorism, also sometimes referred to as Operation Enduring Freedom. This led to a U.S. invasion of Afghanistan, with the primary goal being to dismantle al-Qaeda and end its use of Afghanistan as a base. The Taliban refused to cooperate with efforts to root out al-Qaeda in the country. Early attempts to remove the Taliban from power were successful, though many of its operatives fled to Pakistan. The U.S. went to war with Saddam Hussein in Iraq. Operation Iraqi Freedom refers to when the U.S. troops invaded Iraq and Saddam's forces almost immediately collapsed. Baghdad fell and many Iraqi leaders went into hiding. In the months following, Saddam and many supporters were captured. Although on May 1, 2003, Bush declared the war over and mission accomplished, the conflict continued in Iraq and was followed by questions from Congress and the American public about the administration's rationale for the war.
Here are some tips for annotating your readings in class. Highlight the document, underline the document, and summarize the page as you go along. Hippo every single document that you get, even if you don't think you need to. Make sure to always read the primary sources. You'll probably have a discussion on it in class, or she'll call you out and ask a question. Always check the warm-up for a reading, even if Miss Guy doesn't talk about it in class. She may do a surprise discussion on it and you want to be prepared. Seriously.